Freedom Sings is a nonprofit based in Chattanooga. The organization provides music therapy for veterans and their families. Several weeks ago at a Freedom Sings event, I met Vietnam Air Force veteran Mike Fish. His story is incredible. He was awarded the Air Force Cross for his actions in 1969. It's the second highest honor for a member of the Air Force. A few days ago, I aired what you're about to hear for our Price of Freedom series on NewsChannel 9 and Fox Chattanooga.
I tried college. It didn't really suit me that well. Kind of went from job to job for 6 months, and then I decided, got to do something. So my buddy and I both joined the Air Force.
And what year was that?
That was 1965.
Did you know what was happening in Vietnam at the time?
You know, I didn't. I'm not sure that I really knew what was going on there.
So what'd you end up doing for a job in the Air Force?
I saw this guy that was sitting in an office that had a whole bunch of medals across his chest like this. And I said, well, what does that guy do? And he goes, oh, you don't want to do that. He says, that's too hard. So I went in and talked to the guy, and he says, yeah, he says, it's all volunteer unit. He says, you'll have to take some tests. Can you swim?
Air Force veteran Mike Fish says he'd been swimming his entire life. They put him through several tests and he qualified for Pararescue school. He spent time in a few spots in the States and was sent to Vietnam in early 1969.
And we were rescuing everybody there that crashed. I mean, Army helicopters, you know, I believe the Army lost like maybe 3 or 4 Hueys every day through, you know, getting shot down or crashing. And we were rescuing Army people, Air Force people.
You did tell me you had survivor's guilt and some stuff you had to work through. Tell me about that.
The survivor's guilt was, I think it's when you have somebody's life in your hands, and then you lose them. It's tough, real tough. And so, you know, at the time, I didn't really come back with survivor's guilt, but over time, it's manifests itself. And really don't think about it much, except when I'm in church. It's there. It's just there all the time.
Today on this podcast, an extended cut of my conversation with Vietnam Pararescue veteran Mike Fish. My name is Josh Rowe, and this is Tomorrowtown, Tennessee. A lot of folks who enlist have reasons they enlist.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
right.
So tell me about your childhood and how what led you to say, okay, let's join the military.
Well, I grew up in the Northwest in Idaho, Oregon, and my dad was a teacher. I had 3 brothers and a sister. Right out of high school, I thought maybe I needed to go to college because my dad had his doctorate degree in education, and my older brother was going to college at the time. I tried college. It didn't really suit me that well, so got a couple jobs, you know, plywood mill in Payette, Idaho. Kind of went from job to job for 6 months, and then I decided, got to do something. So my buddy and I both joined the Air Force at the same time. Get me out of town, get me pointed in the right direction, maybe.
And what year was that?
That was 1965.
Did you know what was happening in Vietnam at the time?
You know, I didn't. I'm not sure that I really knew what was going on there. I knew there was some conflict going on then, but we had. I think I remember that we had some advisors over there in '65. So didn't really think about going to war or anything like that. Didn't even know what I was going to do in the Air Force. I just knew that I needed to get pointed in the right direction.
Yeah. So what'd you end up doing for a job in the Air Force?
I was when I went through basic training. The guy that was handing out the MOSs for everybody came in when I went in there, and he said, you know, he says, you could probably become a air conditioning man or a furnace, something like that. And I said, you know, I don't even know what an air conditioner is. So how could I score so high as an air conditioning man? And then I saw this guy that was sitting in an office that had a whole bunch of medals across his chest like this. And I said, well, what does that guy do? And he goes, oh, you don't want to do that. He says, that's too hard. And because I was only like, you know, I was like 5'9", 135 pounds or whatever at that time. And he says, no, you don't want to do that. I said, well, I don't want to be an air conditioning man either. So he said, well, you can go in and talk to him if you want to. So I went in and talked to the guy, and he says, yeah, he says, it's all volunteer unit. He says, you'll have to take some tests. Can you swim? I said, well, I've been swimming all my life. And so went and did the swimming test and PT test, and then got sent to a group. There was 18 of us, started school, Pararescue school, went to 5 or 6 different schools, Navy underwater diving school, second class divers school, jump school, medical school, Army Ranger mountain climbing school, survival school. And that was about 1.5 years of training. And then we went to Florida, and I became a pararescueman after the Florida school. We all 18 of us graduated. And that's what I did. Then went to helicopter school after that. Was sent to California for 1 year. Ended up in Iceland for a little while. And then back to California, and then from California to Vietnam for 1 year, and then from Vietnam to Thailand for a little while. Flew up north some. I don't know if I can still talk about that. And then back to Vietnam, and then was there till, I guess it was January of '70, something like that.
When you say pararescue, I think people have a vision of what that is. Tell me exactly who you're rescuing and why, what the circumstances might be in a situation like that.
Well, actually in California, we had the obligation to, as the Coast Guard did also, to rescue down flyers, airplane, people that crashed, lost hikers. We rescued people in Yosemite, hikers that fall off the trail or whatever. Rescued some civilian airplanes that crashed in the ocean. Rescued Air Force fighter pilots that crashed in the ocean. Civil Air Patrol airplanes that crashed on Mount Whitney. We jumped in there. Most of the time we were jumping out of the C-130s, and parachuting in.
So you said when you went to Vietnam, what year was your tour in Vietnam?
January of '69 to February of '70. And we were rescuing everybody there that crashed. I mean, Army helicopters, I believe the Army lost like maybe 3 or 4 Hueys every day through, getting shot down or crashing. And we were rescuing Army people, Air Force people, anybody that needed extracted. When I was in Thailand, we were flying up in Laos and rescuing the guys that were up in North Vietnam that got shot down or had to bail out. So we were going behind enemy lines, basically, to pick those people up.
Tell me about Laos, because I know at the time it was top secret, and there's a lot that we didn't know until years later. Yeah.
We had Lima sites up there that we staged out of, and then we, when the bombers came north, we would go up and orbit up by the Plains of Jars, and if anybody got in trouble, then we were right there. We were right there.
I've talked to some guys who fought and worked with the Mountain Yard folks and all that, and it's an interesting piece of history that a lot of folks don't know about. Like I said, partly because for years you couldn't talk about it.
Right. There's still a lot of things we're not supposed to talk about, I think.
Understood. I won't push you on that then.
Well, we did have one of our helicopters. We always used 2 helicopters at a time. We had a low bird and a high bird. Just in case the low bird got shot down, the high bird would take over, or if they got shot out of the area. We had Sandys with us that went in and protected us. We did have one of our helicopters got shot down by a MiG. Of course, lost everybody. Pretty emotional. Once you get into a rescue operation, everything's, heightened, and everybody's on edge. And I've listened to tapes before of people that are under fire, in the helicopter, and it's pretty intense.
Can you explain a little bit of that? Just kind of, I think combat in general is intense, but you're talking about a different idea there exactly. So explain kind of the feeling of going in for a rescue.
Well, that's what you're trained for to start with. So you're always anticipating a rescue, and then you're kind of feel good when there wasn't one, when everybody got back. But when somebody got shot down and you were going in to get them, it's like, I don't know, walking a knife's edge. And if you're getting shot at, you can hear the bullets hitting the airplane. Sounds like popcorn. There's really no other sound like it. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but
I've heard guys who were in Vietnam tell me you didn't worry when you heard the bullets because it was the one that you didn't hear.
Right.
That was a scary one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's something that most people like myself who've never lived that. It's hard you can imagine it, but it's hard to place yourself in it. I'm sure that's something that you try to avoid as well. Thinking too deeply about it. But you did tell me you had survivor's guilt and some stuff you had to work through. Tell me about that. Tell me about when you came home and kind of what that was like for you.
Well, when I came back from Vietnam, went right back to California, and was with some combat veterans that had already gotten back. And, you know, we kind of talked among ourselves, and you don't really talk about stuff with other people as much, but it's kind of like been there, done that. So the survivor's guilt was, I think it's when you have somebody's life in your hands, and then you lose them, it's tough, real tough. And so, you know, at the time, I didn't really come back with survivor's guilt, but over time, it's manifests itself, and really don't think about it much, except when I'm in church. It's there. It's just there all the time.
Tell me about the process of trying, of once you've identified it, for anybody who's listening who might be in the same situation you might be in, what the process is of trying to rectify what you can and try to...
Well, I still haven't rectified it, so I don't know how you do that. I know that there's programs, the veterans programs that help people with PTSD. I don't have PTSD so much, I don't think, as survivor's guilt. But the VA has programs like that. Freedom Sings USA. It's awesome, you know. The guys tell their stories, and they put them down on paper and make a song out of them, help people heal. That's what they do.
Yeah. Tell me about that process, because I have done a few stories over years with Bobby and the Freedom Sings folks, and Don Goodman, and talking to people who've been through it. There is, like you said, you don't rectify, but there is some piece of healing for a lot of people who go through it. Can you explain kind of how you found them, what it's done for you, some of those ideas?
Right. Well, I started writing a song to help myself heal. I think whatever you do, if you put something on paper, it helps. I know that I lost a good friend of mine to cancer, and I didn't get to say goodbye to him. You know, I hadn't seen him in 6 months. So I sat down and wrote him a letter, which helped me say goodbye to him. And I think that's the same type of healing that happens with Freedom Sings USA. I wrote a song. I contacted them to help put music to the song and help maybe refine my song some. And that's what they did. And my buddy Rick Petrosky, he did the same thing for me. He helped me put a few words here and there, and he's written a few songs himself. He was over in Vietnam also, in Thailand. And so that's kind of how that whole thing happened. I contacted Bobby, and it just kind of blossomed from there.
I think most of the time it works in reverse than you explained it. I think a lot of times people learn about the program and then start writing their song or whatever. What was your instinct that you thought, I need to write some lyrics or a song? How did that thought process go?
It was probably because I was still dealing with survivor's guilt, and I needed to put something on paper to help me with that. So I just wrote. I was telling a story, basically, about one particular mission I was on, and that I think was the catalyst for the survivor's guilt thing. The mission I was on, we lost one air crew member and one Army Ranger in a firefight. So I don't know, the helicopter went in, Army helicopter went in to pick these guys up and got shot down. And so when they got shot down, then they called Air Force Rescue to come and get them. And I was on the helicopter that went in, the first helicopter that went in. So one of the air crew from the Army helicopter was killed in the crash. And then one of the long-range patrol guys that was on the ground to start with got killed during the firefight. But I went in and basically went down, got all the injured out, and one guy was trapped in the helicopter still. We couldn't get him out. It was getting dark, and so I stayed with him overnight, and we got him out the next day.
Yeah, I'm assuming, like you said, you're in a firefight at the time.
Yes.
Your rescue operation is going on in full-blown combat.
Yeah.
And you're risking your life doing it, but at the same time, you have a job to do.
Yeah, the whole air crew is in jeopardy. You know, it takes the whole air crew to complete the mission. You know, the pilots, the engineers, the other pararescue guys, all coordinating with the Army helicopters to complete the whole thing. And we had Army gunships with us that afternoon and the next morning.
Is that a Cobra or a Huey?
No, Huey gunships.
B model Huey?
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you flying in?
We were flying in the H-43. It's kind of like an egg beater.
Okay. Gotcha. You mentioned going over there with a group and a certain number not making it back. How many did you go over there with?
Well, there was 18 in my class, so we didn't all go over at the same time, of course. But out of the 18 that graduated in my class, 67-2 was our class number. I can think of at least eight of those guys were killed. You know, not necessarily the same time or same year as they went over and came back. And
it speaks to, number one, the situation, but also number two, how dangerous that job is. If you're getting the call, you know things are getting real.
Yeah. I mean, I can cite at least 4 or 5 incidents where they put the PJ on the ground to get the pilot and never saw him again. Or halfway back up to the helicopter on the hoist and get shot down, lost the whole crew. Pretty dangerous.
Yeah. You know, we had a Medal of Honor recipient here in town named Larry Taylor, passed away back in January.
Yep, I helped write his song.
You did?
Yep.
That's outstanding. So you know a little bit of his story.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him once, and I asked him, you know, what was that process like when you knew horn went off? He said he had 2 minutes to get in the air.
Yeah.
And he's flying in, and he said almost every night you're flying into something dangerous.
Yep.
And I said, so what's that process like from the time you leave the ground before you get there? What are you doing in your head to think about it? And what he said was that he's like, you're doing a mental checklist, but you're also trying to psych yourself up a little bit, knowing this is going to be intense.
Right. I don't know. You try to focus. I mean, you can't get distracted. You have to focus on what's at hand. I think the main thing, when you get into a situation like I was in, you have to focus. You have to, there was three guys that were really hurt bad, and had to focus on getting those guys out before he could do anything else, and out and back up to the helicopter and back to their hospitals. So I'd say mentally focus on what's going on around you and what's at hand is the big thing.
How old are you now?
77.
77. As you're well aware, we're losing a Vietnam generation way too fast, and there'll be a time when none of you guys are around anymore, and we know that, sadly.
Right.
When you think about that, how old were you in combat? How old were you then?
I was 20.
Yeah, you're a young man. I mean, 20 is young. To see that kind of stuff.
Almost everybody over there was young.
Yeah, and you've lived, 50 plus years since. What do you want people to remember about your generation, about the conflict, the war, all those things when people remember Vietnam War?
I guess just that the guys that volunteered were doing just that. They were trying to be patriotic. They were trying to do the right thing, and that. I don't know. What comes around goes around. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point, right? Because I grew up in the 70s, more early 70s, and that time growing up, just post-war, I remember people just not talking about it. Like I think I was in high school from really anybody really talking like deeply about the military again, and there was so much of the mistreatment coming home and all these things. But so many of you guys were sons of that World War II generation, signing up to fight like the past generation did. And,
right.
And
right.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Kind of just like the mindset of you and the people who were going in?
I guess the ones that volunteered, like I say, were patriotic. They wanted to do right. They wanted to do the right thing. I have a good friend that was in the Army, and we were sitting around having a beer one day at his place, and he said to me, he says, he knew, because he knew what I did, and I knew what he did. He said, they sent you over there to save people, and they sent me over there to kill people. How ironic.
It's a lot to think about. I mean, that's the thing that I remember being in boot camp and then being clear about it the first week. everything. The line that they said was war is our business and business is bad, is what they said, because we hadn't been in any wars in a while. And it was one of those funny lines, one of the things you understood real quickly what they meant, you know. It's no laughing matter. It's no... when you think about that, you know, it's do you feel like that enough of our society understands?
I don't think the younger generation understands.
Yeah.
I mean, look what's happening now.
Yeah. People don't want to join now. They just don't want to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the politicians, if I can say that, they're not the ones that go over there and get shot at. And so it's all the young kids. I mean, you take a 19 or 18-year-old kid and put a rifle in his hand full of bullets and send him over there to kill people.
Yeah. What
the heck?
And you guys learned that in a way that I don't think past generations really learned specifically. I was reading Jim Stockdale's book, one of his books. He wrote a few, you know, talking about, you know, the administration, McNamara, and it was not like World War II where it was, you know, push these guys back into their own country. It was it's a different mindset. Yeah, yeah. Let's finish this thought. Tell me about your life now. You say you live in Alaska. That sounds pretty amazing, and obviously you do have, you know, things that in your mind that I'm sure are hard to deal with, but what's life like now for you?
Well, I spent 24 and a half years on the Anchorage Fire Department trying to save people and their property. I have friends that were on the fire department that were in the military, and some of them aren't doing very well just because of the PTSD. But now I'm retired. I've been retired. I do a lot of fishing, do a lot of traveling. Don't think about the war too much, other than some of the things I've talked about before.
Tell me about spending, really, literally spending your entire life in service. I mean, you served in the military, you served your community. That's an honorable thing to do with your life. What do you think about?
Thank you.
When you think about how you chose to live it and the jobs you chose and those kind of things.
I think a person has to kind of live on the edge. Takes a certain mindset to do that, to live on the edge. I have 171 parachute jumps. Only one time my parachute didn't open. So I feel like I'm pretty lucky.
A big thank you to Air Force veteran Mike Fish for this conversation on Tomorrowtown, Tennessee. This podcast is a production of News Channel 9, Fox Chattanooga, and Sinclair Broadcast Group Chattanooga. I hope you join me again real soon.